Hi, I'm Brad Simpson, artist and illustrator. Today I wanted to illustrate how you can use oils and acrylics together in the same painting at the same time. Before I get started, I'm going to lay down a layer of liquid clear medium over my canvas, just a even coat throughout. And I'm going to mix a little alizarin crimson and phthalo blue. I'm going for a rich purple color for my sky. You see I've etched in the outline of the mountains in the background with a pencil, and I'm just going to use my small little brush to do the corners here. And my larger brush, I added a little titanium white to this mix to make it a lighter value. And here I'm using just pure alizarin crimson, also with my 2-inch brush. Just laying the color in. And I go back with cadmium yellow right on top of all this. This is a nice sunset evening picture. And with my fan brush, which is really a blending tool, you go back over the top of it and blend these edges to smooth out the harsh lines. And I want to add a moon up here in the sky, so I'm going to add just a little titanium white to the yellow and dab in a little circle. It's okay to not make it too bright because I want to give the illusion of a misty night sky. And go back with the fan brush and blend out these edges very subtly. And since I have all this oil paint left on my palette, I'm going to go ahead and just use some of this color for my sea below. Most of this I'm going to go back later over with acrylics when I add the waves, but I don't want to waste this paint, so I'm just going to go ahead and add this color. Just laying it in the colors that I used in the sky, the moon too, some ripples here on the water. And now I'm going to start laying in my mountains in the background using yellow and orange. I'm putting in the areas where the moon is shining right directly on top of the mountain. And I want a really bright value here. I think orange is a great color to use for a painting like this. I'm using a little raw umber on top of this to add just some darker value. Here and there, where the moonlight might not be hitting so strongly. Now go back with some dark umber, mix it into that mix for the shadow areas. And I'm using a fan brush again to blend those shadows with the light all across, make that juxtaposition less harsh. And now with a round brush, which is a smaller tool, I'm going to go in and add some highlights to the area where the nooks and crannies are kind of sticking out. I'm adding just a little white to orange, and I go back over that same mix with some of my shadow areas just to show the indication of some nooks and crannies. These rocks are really craggy. And again with my raw umber, I go in, my dark umber rather, go in and add some darker shadows and blend it all together using my fan brush. It's important to clean your fan brush here and there so you won't start mixing mud. Now here in the foreground mountains, I'm going to go a little brighter with a mix of blue, kind of a blue lavender gray mix. And I'm just laying this base color in rapidly. Again, I'm still using oils at this point. Oils will take a lot longer to dry than acrylics do, but I'll show you how you can mix acrylics right over the top of wet oils. I know a lot of artists out there would never do that. They think it's just a crazy concept, but it works really well, especially with the liquid clear I used as my base coat. Now I'm blending, always blending. These are just various shades of blue. But I want my background mountains to mix with my foreground mountains, so I've added a little raw umber to the blue up front, and I'm just blending that. It makes the contrast less harsh. And for the really highlight areas where the moon's hitting the rock, using a tiny bit of cadmium yellow with titanium white and a liner brush to go in just subtly, and then of course go back over the top and blend very carefully, just with a delicate touch. I think that looks pretty good. So we're ready to start on our ocean, and I use this flat edge to draw in the line, and now I'm using acrylics just right over the top of that wet oil. I can do this because I used a liquid medium base, and I'm just dropping in the same colors as my sky, just using a slightly darker value because I want a really moody ocean scene. This is going to be tumultuous waves. I'm looking for just interesting colors. You wouldn't find these colors necessarily in nature, but for this kind of surrealism, I think these colors are just, they work very well. And here I start adding in my waves, again using acrylics. Just a blue, this is true blue, and I'm paying very careful attention to my strokes, the direction, the angle I'm using. This is very important when it comes to waves. You've got to get the lay of the water just right, or it just will not look right. If you're a beginner, I highly recommend using a reference photo. You don't want to plagiarize or steal, but use a reference photo to give you an idea of how waves work, how their layout is set up. And I'm using various blues just to add various layers of depth. Blues and whites. You can get 1,000 different variations of blues just by adding a little bit of white to the mix. And that's what I'm doing on top, just adding pure titanium white acrylic. And I'm changing my direction, the direction of the brush stroke, to show the water overlapping. Just here and there. Use your imagination. You can see by just adding a little blue here and there, a little white here and there, you're getting all these different shades, and it makes your painting much more realistic if that's the look you're going for. And with a little liner brush, I'm adding some of the finer details to this wave. If you notice the ocean, the further back your waves from the beach, the higher they tend to be, the more tumultuous, and as they grow closer to the beach, they tend to get a little smaller. So this first wave is pretty big. Now I'm going to go back in and we'll start working on a second wave, and you see I just added a dark crimson color with some blue to give a nice purple value. Again, paying close attention to the angles of my brush strokes. This wave is closer, so therefore it's going to appear a little larger and longer. And I changed the direction of my brush strokes to show water overlapping. This is very important. Again, this is acrylics at this point, and I'm just using a dark value blue. And as before, I go in with white And just start adding all the little layers of foam and mist and blending it all together as needed. And I go back with a little smaller brush to add some of the finer details. Some crest here on top of the wave, some foam. Take your time with this. You don't want to rush it. You take your time, your waves are going to look realistic. Here I'm adding a little green, just with white and green to get a very aqua color green. Add that to the mix. And we'll splash in some bigger foam here, just titanium white and blue for the shadow areas. Water has shadows too. And I'll go back across the top and do the same. Just add some splash here and there. These waves are crashing down. And again, a dark value blue. This is dark blue with the alizarin crimson. It's again acrylics at this point. Just adding in a deep base coat here. And here is my beach is going to lay here. And I'm going to use a lighter value blue to show where the water is washing up on the beach. It's more transparent at this point. And with a fine little flat brush, I'll go in and add some indication of the water, so a little more detail washing up on the beach. For those of you who are interested, I do teach art, and I would love to teach you. I host online classes as well as personal classes here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I teach classroom art classes, and I also teach one-on-one. So if you're interested, or you think your Boy Scout group or church group would be interested, please just comment below, let me know, send me a message. I'd love to work with you. I'm going to add another little wave down here. By this point, it's getting real small. The waves are getting smaller and smaller as you get close to the beach. Acrylics and oils are just some of the mediums I like to work in. I also really love watercolor paints and colored pencils. I do a lot of work with Inktense pencils, and watercolor pencils, and just pencil drawings. So if you're interested in learning any of those or just honing your skills, then just comment below and I'd love to work with you. Let's throw in some little rocks out here to give these waves something to crash against. Again, I'm just using a dark value blue for the shadow areas. And then we go back on top with a little lighter blue to add the highlights. And just blend it together. Now here is where my beach is. And I want to use colors similar to the background water where the moon is shining. This is one of my favorite colors in painting. It's kind of a light a yellow ochre, but it's just so full of color. It's a brown, orange, yellow, all mixed together, and I think it's just beautiful. And here I'm laying in just a very light layer I've mixed it with a lot of water. I dip my brush into water and then a little into the paint and just scrub it in because I don't want to go real dark here. I want to give the indication of the water washing up on the beach. Just subtly, just with a very light brush stroke, go evenly across. And now I'll go back with a little blue again, a lot of water in my brush, and just a tad bit of blue to give a nice transparent look. Now as I go lower here, I'm going to go a little lighter, so I've added a little more yellow to the mix. In acrylics, it's called bright yellow, but you mix it with the browns and it turns out a nice golden color. And go evenly across. Keep your brush strokes the same. And I'm ready to add a little more water to the mix. Just let it flow lightly right over the beach. Nothing too dark, just very subtly. Your paintbrush should be saturated with water. You're using just a little blue, a little paint, and you wash right over the top of your golden yellow color. Really gives it a nice transparent look. Just let your water wash up on the beach wherever you think it should go. Again, using really light, delicate strokes. Nothing too heavy. And just for the sake of interest, I'm adding a little rockwood red here. And linear motions just across the sand, just to give it an interesting look. And here, I want my moon to shine down over the bay. So we add a little white into the water and even on the beach. This sand is waterlogged, so you're going to have a degree of reflection all the way down. And I'm using just tiny little strokes. Don't make your lines too big or it's just not going to look right. I'm using a small little round brush to add this detail. And you go back and blend it with a fan brush or with your finger. Just careful not to smudge it too much. You can see I'm just using the edge of the fan brush. Now I'm going back with a little liner brush and adding a little more white and blue. Some water washing up on the beach, just finer little details. Very subtle touch here. Going right over on my reflection. And let's add some more rocks here in the foreground. Dark blue, a mixture of dark blue and red. It's more of a purple color, but I know it shows up almost black on camera. And you can experiment with values, make it as dark as light as you want. And add your little highlights, which is various shades of blue. I'm adding a little white along the base of the rocks to show the water rushing around them onto the beach. And I'll tell you what, let's add a couple more little rocks over here. Some smaller rocks. and just a really light baby blue color, I call it, for the water. Now let's add a little waterfall back here to add a little color, something interesting where those mountains come into a valley together. Using titanium white, a little mixture of blue, just straight down. Just a simple little waterfall way back here in the distance. Add a little splash where it's falling into the sea back here and smudge it. And we're almost done with this painting. Let's go ahead and add a few little trees back here at the base of the mountain on this old island out here. Some tropical trees, some vegetation. I'm just using a mix of green and blue here. Nothing too dark. Just want to give the illusion of some trees, maybe some old palm trees out here. They grow up all over the mountain here. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video as much as I had painting. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to see you again soon.